Hey everybody, this week's episode of the Rahdo Q&A is brought to you by Elf Creek Games, and hello everybody. I'm about to answer a bunch of questions submitted by folks like you to the email address questions@rahdo.com. And by all means, folks, if anything I talk about or my wife talks about, because she sometimes shows up on these as well, prompts any further questions from you, well, you know what to do. Questions@rahdo.com is the email address. Keep them coming, folks. I want to hear your cues so I can AM. And speaking of which, let's get right to it. But, folks, I'm going to talk about several different topics today, and if any of them don't really strike your fancy, don't worry. There are links down in the show notes that let you jump around from question to question so you can listen to just the parts you're interested in. All right, sound good? Then let's go. Okay, everybody, let's get going. First of all, we got a question from Andres who says, in the last episode, you told us how much you dislike the attack modifier mechanism in Marvel Champions, wherein you reveal the next card and potentially add 1 to 3 damage to attack. Why is this so much worse than Gloomhaven's attack modifier deck for monsters? Don't they do the same thing? You know, basically replace dice rolls with cards, but just a little bit different? I'd actually say they're a lot different, actually. I mean, you're right. They are the same core idea. But to me, there is a big difference between them because the Gloomhaven modifier deck is much more predictable and nowhere near as powerful and swingy. It's generally speaking, there's a lot of zeros, some ones and some twos, and the critical hits and the critical misses, which honestly we just take out. We take them out for the human players and for the AIs because those are so insanely swingy as to just be not game-breaking. That's not the case at all, but it can so undo everything that we find them frustrating. And I've always appreciated that Gloomhaven says, hey, if you don't like these particular things, if you want a more predictable experience, take the 2X's and the perfect hits and the critical hits and the critical misses, take those cards out. And we do. But Marvel Champions doesn't have anything like that. Marvel Champions, you're right. As a general rule, they'll add just, anywhere from 0 to a few points of extra damage that they'll do. And, if that was all they do, maybe that'd be okay. Although in Marvel Champions, the swing between, +0 and +3 is huge. Never mind the fact that Marvel Champions doesn't have the other side of Gloomhaven, which is occasionally, the enemy will do less damage than normal, so that you get those positive, yeah! Oh my gosh, I can't believe we dodged it. In Marvel Champions, you can get those because, hey, sometimes they just don't affect anything, and that's the equivalent of nothing bad happened. Whereas opposed in Gloomhaven, yeah! We drew the card and something good happened. And the thing is, as I said right up front, Gloomhaven is superior to my taste and Jen's taste because it's more predictable. It's a fixed deck. And as we go through the deck, until the deck resets, we can more and more accurately predict what is likely to happen. Oh, we haven't seen the +2s yet, or we haven't seen the negatives. There's a good chance we're going to dodge a bullet here and the enemy's going to do less damage than normal. Okay, if that's the case, let's take that into our thinking. With Marvel Champions, you can't predict at all what is going to happen. And it's nothing, but at best it's going to be, good, nothing bad happened, or, bad things happen. There's never a good thing happened. And then, on top of that, Marvel Champions does more than just, modifies the damage that bad guys do. There are lots of, sometimes, hugely game-changing effects, like just wiping out your allies or, forcing you, back into your, alter ego or, any number of things that are cool and they are exciting and I don't mind them. I appreciate that they create a really raucous and unpredictable situation with all kinds of stuff that you have to respond to. But at the end of the day, I would still prefer the more fixed, variability of Gloomhaven. Now, Gloomhaven has those kinds of big surprises too, but that's because In Gloomhaven, the actual modifier deck is separated from the enemy deck, whereas in Marvel Champions they're fused into one thing. And honestly, again, I prefer the Gloomhaven approach, where I'm keeping track of what's likely to hit us in the modifier deck. We know what these enemies are capable of too, and we're keeping track of what have they done their big super teleport across the room and stun us all move. Oh, that hasn't happened yet. That might still be coming. The thing is, Marvel Champions is just a bit more messy. It's a bunch more globbed together, and there's just less opportunity to try to predict what your opponent is going to do. I'm not saying it's not there. Of course it is. And as you know these enemies better and better, or their sidekicks, depending on how you build the decks, you can still predict and look for certain things. It's all still there, but Gloomhaven makes it a lot easier to keep track of what has happened and what hasn't happened because of the strict delineation of the two different types of things. That plus the fact the Gloomhaven's event deck sometimes has good things that happen to you instead of just nothing but bad things. Overall, that's why I think we prefer the Gloomhaven approach. But they're both great. I mean, obviously, for a while, Marvel Champions was in my top 10 games of all time, and that was with the system as it is. You're just asking, why do I prefer one over the other? And that would be it. Okay. Thank you, Andres. Next up, Bob says, Rahdo, a few months ago, you said something along the lines of, since moving back to the US, yours and Jen's lives have become more stressful, and as a result, Jen's preference in gaming trends towards less intense games, while you still tend to enjoy games with tight and tense decisions. I may not have stated that perfectly, but it got me thinking a slightly different path about games with different levels of difficulty or thinkiness for different players within the same game. I think this could be a common scenario for gaming groups or couples that have different levels of experience or wants in modern board games. Merchant's Cove comes to mind as the central board has a shared experience that's not too heavy, while individual tunes have varying levels of complexity. I'm surprised you call them tunes, but I understand what you mean. It's an asymmetric game. Everybody has, their own completely unique game they're playing, and they're, some of them are more complex than others. The Captain versus the Oracle, as an example. I'm curious if you know of any other games that might be along those lines. My wife and I love your channel. Thank you for what you do. Well, yeah, sure. I know of one right off the top of my head, and it was in my top 10 games of last year. I think it's fantastic. It's called Free Radicals, and it's the same basic idea as Merchant's Cove. In the box, there are 10 different games of varying levels of complexity, pick up and deliver games, Moncala games, deck building games, adventure games, and every time you play, each player is going to get their own board and play their own unique game, and they can play the one they really like, or now I don't think there's much variety amongst these games in terms of complexity. They're all kind of at the same level, but still, I think you're going to have a situation playing Free Radicals where, you know what? This type of game generally suits you better, Person X, and this type of game suits me better. And with 10 games in the box, you're going to have so much variety. So, right off the bat, Free Radicals is phenomenal. Now, are there other ones? Well, there are. There's, the stuff from Leader Games. Root, and before it, Vast, really kind of popularized this new idea of, hey, you know what? How about we throw 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 different games in the box and let everybody play their own little mini game while they're pulled together on some central element that makes them still interact with each other. Now, Vast and Root are in-your-face, attacky, war-gamey type things where players are constantly trying to beat each other. So I'm not interested in that. And honestly, that's why I'm not interested in Merchant's Cove, because the central game, the mercantile element of the game, can be really, really cutthroat. Too much for me and Jen. But that's why I love Free Radicals so much and why it made my top 10 of the year. Now, the big question is, are there other games that do this? And to find out, we are going to go over to Board Game Geek, because really, those are the only two I can think of that work for me and Jen. Let's see. Let's just go to Free Radicals on Board Game Geek, or Free Radicala. I can type Free Radicals. Radicals. There we go. And I'm looking to see, is this basically a mechanism that Board Game Geek recognizes, and we could find other mechanisms or a category or something like that. Let's see. Action points, chaining. I don't think it is. Economics. So it looks like Board Game Geek has not come up with a classification for this type of game. So, if I can't find it based on that, it would have been handy if it was. My next thing is to go look at geek lists that this game might be on. All right, I'm zoomed in. There we go, geek lists. And see if there are any geek lists where people have come up with a list of all the types of games that do this. Right, there are a bunch, but I'm not seeing anything that... Yeah, and you'd think, folks, I would have done this ahead of time, so you don't have to watch me just scroll through lists of stuff. That is kind of disappointing, because this is such a cool, new, relatively new thing. Don't get me wrong, it's been around forever. I mean, there is a very popular series of war games called the coin games, or counterinsurgency games. They've been doing this for years, if not decades, but only if you're interested in hardcore war games. The idea of this stuff happening in, my neck of the woods, Euro games, is a relatively new thing. But, let's see, there it is on my list. Alrighty. But yeah, it looks like nobody, or at least nobody has made a geek list on Board Game Geek listing all the games that do this and put Free Radicals on the list. But, Free Radicals would have made the list, because I think, that's its main claim to fame, is that, to my way of thinking anyway, it does it better than any other game that's done it so far. So, in the absence of that, the last thing I can suggest you do, Bob, if you're looking for more of these, is actually go to faq.rahdo.com, because I think it's my question number 5. FAQ entry number 5 is, hey, I love X. What should I go and find? And I've often found the best way to get the answer to that question is go to the link that's in my FAQ question number 5, because it takes you to the recommendation form on Board Game Geek. And Bob, if you post the same question you asked me to this group, I guarantee you, within a day, you will be deluged with suggestions. If there's anything else out there that fits this bill, the denizens of Board Game Geek will tell you about it. And they'll give you other suggestions as well. I mean, you can do a back and forth. The recommendations form on Board Game Geek is by far the single most valuable resource in all of board gaming. Not just on Board Game Geek, but in the entire concept of modern board games. I mean, I am so happy. 12 years ago, when I first got into modern board games, I found the recommendation form within the first couple of months of me trying to figure out what games we liked, because it was such an invaluable resource, and it continues to be. So, Bob, do not walk to faq.rahdo.com, go to question number 5, which will take you to the recommendations form, and ask that question, and you'll get a better. And, I'm sorry, I would love to give you more answers myself, but I've given you the best one, but there are probably other ones out there too, and I will let Board Game Geek take over. Okay, anyway, let's move on then. Daniel says, Luck in Co-op Games Part 5, the conclusion. Oh, Daniel, it's been an epic journey, and we're almost to the end, so let's go. Preface. When I play Aeon's End, I always randomize all levels of the boss deck, so I don't know if Dire Abattoir is coming, the one where you can take damage equal to your life, so I can't prepare. And when we play, one player always has more gems, so he can pay, it's supposed to be what he can pay for enemy power cards, and it happened frequently that player couldn't pay, so prep or no prep, it can end the game. Again, Daniel, it only ends the game if you're almost dead anyway, which means if that one card can come along and just instantly wipe you out, then that means that was the final player. Everybody else has already been KO'd, and and it's over. I don't think that's the case. Again, you're bearing the lead. Folks, this is a continuation that Daniel and I have been going back forth on now, I guess for 5 months, where he keeps saying, isn't it crappy that when cooperative games throw in insta-lose cards, that just instantly wipe you out, and there's nothing you can do, there's nothing you can prepare. It just says, oh, you drew the event card that says everybody loses. And my counterpoint to Daniel has always been, yes, that would be terrible if it happens. And it doesn't. If that is in a game, it is a sign of a bad design, or certainly a bad card in maybe an otherwise good game, and you should just take that card out. But your examples for Aeon's End are fundamentally not working, because even if the card comes out and you can't prevent the effect from happening, all it's going to do is KO one player, and that just puts you in more danger. It doesn't instantly end the game. So it's still... we're going to have to agree to disagree on this, Daniel, as we come to Luck in Co-op Games Part 5, the conclusion, because this is not an example of what you've said is, I would agree, a totally valid concern. You know what, Daniel? I haven't mentioned this before. I can think of one card I've seen that is total hot garbage in events. And it's interesting. It's in my second highest ranked game of all time. It's Shadowrun Crossfire. One of the higher level event cards that can hit you late in the game. I don't remember the name of it. I should have looked it up. But it's basically a card that says, hey, when you reveal this card, do this bad thing that hurts you, and then draw another one. Honestly, I think that's garbage. I think that's a really crappy card, and it might as well be removed from the deck, because in a perfect world, my expectation is that the designers have created all of these events such that they create excitement and twists and drama, which is what we talked about in the last entry of this ongoing discussion, but that they are not fundamentally broken, that they do not lead to the situation you're talking about. And Shadowrun Crossfire is very well known for being incredibly harsh and brutal and punishing. So, to put a card that says, hey, take an already incredibly harsh and brutal and punishing, whatever it is you're about to draw, and then make it even worse by drawing this card first that says, oh, do a bad thing, and then draw another card that you were already going to draw anyway. I think that one is, even though it's in my second favorite game of all time, it is one of the worst cards from a design perspective I've ever seen. And if we draw that, we say, nope, that's the BS card, and we just move on to the next one. Here's the deal, Daniel. If you really hate Dire Abattoir that much, as you say, you randomize the boss deck, which is one of the cool things about Aeon's End. Just leave that card out, buddy. No one is holding a gun to your head and saying that card must be in the game or else the entire experience you have is invalidated. If there are a few cards in there, because Aeon's End now has so many cards, if you want to leave a few of them, it's no different than statistically, oh, that card just ended up at the bottom of the deck and you weren't likely to see it or something like that. If you don't like it, take it out. But I still maintain that it does not do what you say it does. It does not put your friend who didn't have enough to be able to pay to get rid of the card, it doesn't instantly lose the game for you. It just ratchets the game to another level of tension. Now, to be fair, that's what the Shadowrun Crossfire card does too. But to me, that one goes over the line, and Dire Abattoir does not. Anyway, though, continuing on, Daniel says, next question. Are game over I love how you changed this. They're not just game over cards, but they're game over adjacent cards. Like Dire Abattoir, always a good because of drama. When do they become not good? When are they not being good? Well, hey, I just gave you an example. Like I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pause and I'm going to name and shame that card. Hold on. Okay, I found it. Although I had to get my glasses out to be able to read because I'm getting old and the font on these is small. But here's the card in question. 1 Hot Minute. And man, looking through this deck of event cards just reminded me how brutal this game is. Oh man, Daniel, if you think Aeon's End is unfair to you, do not try Shadowrun Crossfire, but reveal 2 extra cards at the top of the Crossfire deck, which is the event deck. Resolve all effects on him as if they were the current Crossfire. So this basically says, oh, if this event happens, make 2 events happen back to back. And the interesting thing is, if this comes later in the game, which is what this +6 means, if it happens early, hey, instead of dealing with 1 event, you have to deal 2. At the end of the game, believe me, in this game, you are just barely scraping by. Instead of having to deal with 1 event when we're on death's door, reveal 3 events and deal with them. This is maybe one of the most garbage cards I've ever seen in any game. And again, it is one of my favorite games of all time. And yeah, this is ridiculous because the thing is, I go about this working under the assumption that the designers have tried to ensure, with with some wiggle room, that all of these cards are comparably challenging. Yes, there can be different circumstances where, oh, this one's a bit tougher than normal or a bit easier than normal, but kind of across the board, all other things being equal, they all provide the same level of challenge. One Hot Minute does not. One Hot Minute says, oh, I am demonstrably, undeniably 2 or 3 times harder than any other card in the deck. And if this game was designed so that you can just barely make it to the end with all the cards at their normal difficulty, having one card in the deck that is triple difficulty, and it says it right on the card, yeah, I'm 3 times as hard as any other card in the deck, just seems like garbage. And this is a garbage thing. It actually took me a while to find it. When I couldn't find it, I was starting to think, oh, maybe I literally threw this or burned it on a pyre, because this is a bad card. Because it breaks that rule. To me, Dire Abattoir does not, because it's not an instant lose. And to me, it's just a different scary, eventful, dramatic, almost traumatic thing that can happen to you, but it is something that is within keeping of the difficulty level of all the cards, or at least it feels that way to me. I've not run any numbers, but the developers have earned my trust enough that I believe in it. And the same thing is true for Shadowrun Crossfire, except for One Hot Minute, which is one hot piece of garbage card. So that would be a case of it going too far, because they broke the covenant and showed me, yeah, this card is literally unbalanced and literally unfair in the worst possible way. It was literally worse than I remember it being, and I remember it being pretty bad already. Okay. Next up, Gloomhaven as number 1, the continuation. Although, it's not number 1 anymore, right? I think it's like number 3 now, but still. How much did the people who mostly play Euro games and have always wanted a dungeon crawler but felt like roll-to-resolve games with very little depth weren't for them contribute to Gloomhaven's success? Oh, I think that's huge. I think that's a very important thing. And it's so sad, too, because I'm pretty sure I played Gloomhaven and covered it on the channel the same year that I played another really super smart Euro approach to dungeon crawls called Mouth to Perdition. Is that right? I think, they changed the number though, didn't they? Perdition's Mouth? Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. All right. It's got, right, that's right, I forgot. It's got a new version of it, a card game version. Yeah, but Perdition's Mouth, the Abyssal Rift. And that was another game that was right out around the same time as Gloomhaven. And if Gloomhaven hadn't existed, maybe Perdition's Mouth, which basically added Rondel, a very Euro-y mechanism to, traditional dungeon crawling. Maybe that one would have been the thing to reign supreme. And, but, it was just wrong place at wrong time. Maybe it had been out a year earlier. But yeah, I definitely think there was a primed and ready to go audience for people like me who love action and adventure. I love The Lord of the Rings. I grew up watching, Saturday morning cartoons. These are my favorite types of shows. And, but I didn't want to play the way these games were traditionally represented by fantasy, as typified by Fantasy Flight Games, and everybody else followed their lead of, yeah, you know what? It's just a bunch of random stuff that happens, and you roll a lot of dice, and there's some randomness, and random. Yeah. So, Gloomhaven was definitely in the right place at the right time after literally decades of these games existing, following an existing formula that, because there were other ones. I mean, gosh. There's a very good series, but again, it had a lot of dice in it. Oh, there were a few that I played over the years prior to Gloomhaven. Now, and, I thought, man, I really like this, but I just don't stick with it. I mean, heck, really, you go back far enough, everything basically was, expanding from those old 80s games, Hero Quest and Dungeon Quest, right? And that just became the blueprint, the template that nobody, that people innovated within, but never really said, hey, what if we just start over from scratch? And Gloomhaven did it, and Perdition's Mouth did it, and a few other games did as well. And so, there's a huge advantage to being first mover into a space. Would that have been enough if Gloomhaven had been a more traditional box size, let's say, that offered a campaign that gave you 10 missions, right? I don't think so. I think Gloomhaven's success ultimately is a combination of things. It is the fact that it provided this, it wasn't the only one, but it was the one in the right place at the right time with the right combination of stuff and the right price too. Man, the original Gloomhaven, originally on if you backed it the first one run, I think it cost like $79 or something like that. I always wondered, did Isaac Childress take a huge bath? Did he lose money hand over fist in that? Because he got the reprint up very, very quickly, and the price went up very, very quickly too. But anyway, Gloomhaven's success was a combination of things, but it was nobody put that much content in a box at that time. Yes, there was the game with all the naked people running around that I can't think of now. But I mean, that was such a niche game, and it did so much to turn people off. And I can't. Kingdom of Death Monster. Yes, Kingdom of Death Monster did the same kind of thing, but Kingdom of Death Monster is a million miles away from, let's say, mainstream accessible. Gloomhaven was approachable for people who like dungeon crawls. And you're right. You're right to call it out. Gloomhaven brought Euro gameplay mechanisms into a traditionally Ameritrash milieu. That combined with the absolutely ridiculous amount of content, the likes of which the industry had never seen before, because no publisher in their right mind would throw in a game and 4 expansions worth of content all into one box and then only charge you $70 for it. Or maybe $80. I forget exactly, but it was so cheap. It was it was a perfect storm of stuff that just catapulted it once people started getting their hands on it. And people who missed it had to get their hands on it, and it was still a ridiculously low price because, don't forget, Gloomhaven did some smart stuff too, like not putting 50,000 miniatures to keep prices down. Hey, let's do a bunch of standees instead. I mean, so there were definitely smart moves across the board. Let's not throw in 20 different double-sided boards for all the different maps we want with all this variety. Let's have people just, snap them together, which of course they were not the first to do that. It was a whole combination of smart decisions that Isaac did. But you're right to call out the inherent Euroiness of it, because that was fresh and new and different. Not alone, but again, right place at the right time for Gloomhaven. Okay, next we go to Darren, who says, question, what's the best game you will never play? Undaunted, as an example. That's a really hard one to answer, Darren, because I would play Undaunted. I don't want to play Undaunted, but I would. I mean, I watched Kimberly covered Undaunted for the channel, and I thought, wow, that looks amazing. That's one of those kind of games that makes me sad my brain is the way it is, because I am denying myself so many amazing experiences. But I don't intend to deny myself those experiences. If the opportunity to play Undaunted came along, and what would that opportunity be? It would have to be somebody who is super passionate about it, who is willing to do all the heavy lifting, because I don't want to have to exert myself to play a game that I'm probably not going to enjoy, even if I respect it. Because here's the deal. I would want to play Undaunted knowing that I would not necessarily have a good time, but that I would come away with a greater respect for it, because I am a student of design. I was a professional video game designer for almost 2 decades. And while I am not a professional board game designer, I am a professional board game design critic. And I mean, it's what I love. More than beautiful, intricate, rich narrative, or wonderful, evocative art, or silky, smooth, wonderful to the touch components. What really gets me excited about a game is design. And even if it's a game that I'm not going to like for various and sundry reasons, I'll still appreciate it. So I would totally play Undaunted. So then the real question, which is going to be hard, is, what is the best game that I simply will not play? And I mean, then you have to ask, well, what is just the best game, period, right? So let's go back to Board Game Geek. Let's go back to the browser, and Board Game Geek. What do I need to do? I need to browse the Board Game Geek Top 100. We got to use something as a metric for what is the greatest game of all time. Let's go with this. And, right, just going down, I have played Twilight Imperium 4th edition. I have not played, but I would totally, if the timing was right, someday I hope to sit down with Shay and Ruel, because it's both of their favorite games of all time, and maybe a few other people, and spend a lazy afternoon into the evening. But I'd probably try to get everybody to let's not try and dwell too much. Let's try and get this done in 5 hours. I would totally, in the right circumstances, give Twilight Imperium 4th Edition a try. I feel like I should. I feel like I'm an incomplete gamer if I haven't. Or no, that's not fair. I do not want to put the idea in anybody's head that there is any game that you must play, and if you don't play it, you are therefore not a true gamer. That's crap. I know there are people out there who say, if you haven't played this, then you're not really a board gamer. No, not interested in that. I do not agree with that argument. But for me, I'm a board game professional, and I feel like I am not as good a professional as I could be having not played that. I've watched a lot of videos. I've watched Shay's how to play from start to finish, stem to stern. So I do know the game, but I would still play it. Continuing on, then we just got more and more games I played. Oh, okay, number 9, War of the Rings 2nd Edition. That one gives me real pause. Interesting, number 10, Star Wars Rebellion. Yeah, I'd play that. I'd be interested in playing it. I don't know if I'd finish it, because I think I'd play it enough turns to say, okay, I think I get it. I'm really not having a good time, but I'd want to try it. And, War of the Rings 2nd Edition is such a big deal. But I know, it's just such a... Well, no, that's not true. I need to look into it more. I've never really looked into War of the Ring that much, but isn't a sizable part, isn't it a very asymmetric game? One player is playing a traditional war game, and the other player is, I'm playing a war game, but only as a distraction to do this other thing that I really want to do, which is get the ring to Mount Doom and blow it all up and stuff like that. So I guess if I had the opportunity to play the side of good, not because I want to be a goody two-shoes, but because I would want to have that experience of, I've got to deal with this war game stuff, but that's really beside the point to me. What I'm really interested in is pursuing this kind of hidden movement game. If I recall correctly, I think that's what... I am intrigued enough by that to want to try it. Again, I don't know if I'd finish it, because, that's the same problem I would have with, Twilight Imperium. I don't know if I want to spend 3+ hours on any game, period. That's another real hard pass for me. But I can imagine a circumstance where I could see that happening. So, it's a never say never. So, so far I haven't said never. And again, most of these, almost every single one of these I've played Twilight Struggle. I haven't played Scythe, but I would totally play Scythe with the right place at the right time. I'm not interested in it at all because I feel like I know Scythe well enough. I don't think I would even get anything out of playing it. But if there were people who really, really, really wanted to play a game with me, and they really love Scythe, and there was nothing else to play. But see, that's me really putting in a lot of caveats. I have zero interest in... But actually, that's not true. I do have an interest in playing that game. So I guess under the right circumstances, I would play Nemesis. Really, the reality is probably the only games I would not play are going to be like straight up hardcore war games that have, War of the Ring got a pass because it's a straight up war game, but then it has this other element to it. But I don't know if Warhammer is in the top 100, but I have zero interest. And if somebody really wanted me to do it, I don't know if I'd be nice and say yes just to be nice. I might, but you'd be really hard pressed. But still, I've played Root. That's a war game. I've played games that I knew I wouldn't like. I've played Barrage. Oh my God, one of the meanest, nastiest games I ever played. For no good reason. Did not have to be that way. But I've played Blood Rage, which might surprise some people. So I've played a lot of games that people would assume I would not play. And I'm afraid I'm going to get to the end of the Board Game Geek Top 100 and not find a single answer of a game that if you asked me to at a convention, I would steadfastly out and out refuse. I really want to play Kingdom Death Monster. I really, really do. Even though I suspect I won't like it. But I really want to give it a try because there's elements of it that are very intriguing to me. I mentioned that because it just flew by as I'm scrolling. And probably 85% of all these games I have played. I would love to play Battlestar Galactica someday. I think that would be great. I like deception and, playing mind games and stuff. And yeah, okay, I made it through the BGG Top 100 and there was not a single game in here that I would not play if the opportunity were right. So Darren, I almost feel... Hold on a second. Sorry, I had to get a drink of water. My throat was still. The question, Darren, almost should have been, what's the best game I'll never play again. That's an interesting topic because there's a bunch of games I've played that are like, no. I could make a list as long. Because again, I crave novelty. I crave new experiences. So I couldn't find anything in the Board Game Geek Top 100, the greatest 100 board games of all time. So if I couldn't find one there, I don't know what. I found one. I just went to the next page and I found one almost immediately. Twilight Imperium 3rd Edition. Now that's kind of cheating. Because I'll play 4th Edition. I'll play whatever the newest, greatest one is, but there's no way I'm going to play that, and I'm going to do a comparison analysis to the 3rd Edition or the 2nd Edition. Certainly that's not going to happen at all, but that's kind of cheating, because if I played the 4th Edition, haven't I really played the 3rd Edition in some way? Yeah. It's going to be a game, whatever the greatest game is. And I'm surprised. It used to be, there were several of these, just straight up old school war games in the Board Game Geek Top 100. And now I've made it to the top 150 and I haven't seen a single one of them yet. But it's going to be one of those that is widely regarded as infallibly great, that I would say, yeah, I won't play that. Sorry, there's nothing in there of any interest. I do not want to spend any of my time on this planet experiencing that game. People might say Star Wars X-Wings Miniatures. I played the Star Trek version of Star Wars X-Wing Miniatures. I played that. I've played lots of combat battle-y games. I've even enjoyed a few. But, yeah. Gosh. What would I not do? What would I just say a flat no to? I played Memoir 44. I thought it was cool. I wished it was... I loved the gameplay system of that. I wished it was applied to a different game. But it wasn't, unfortunately. Yeah, we've almost made it through... Okay, there you go. Command and Colors Ancients. There you go. I found one. The greatest game of all time that I will never play, Darren, is Command and Colors. Pick a title. And if I recall correctly, I think Command and Colors is the same kind of really brilliant card system as, Memoir 44. So I feel like, hey, I've already experienced that in a game that I didn't like. So why play a game I'll hate even more to experience the thing I've already experienced? Because that whole card system is wonderful. I've played Captain Sonar. I've played Go. Yeah, so there we go. I found it. And I guess it was no surprise, but it was an interesting thought exercise. And Darren, I don't know if I want to encourage you to write me to questions@rahdo.com again and ask, well, what is the best game you'll never play again? Because that would be a harder one to do. And that will be the end of this session of the Rahdo Q&A. Thank you, folks, for watching and also for submitting your questions. Send me more to the email address questions@rahdo.com, and I'll get you covered in a future episode. And in the meantime, if you would like to hear some more, you're in luck. I have been doing the Rahdo Talks Through audio podcast for years now with my wife, Jen, and we have got hundreds of hours for you to enjoy. You can hit that big box that's on screen right now if you want to dive deep. Also, you can go on ahead and subscribe so you won't miss the next Rahdo Q&A. And thank you, folks, for watching, for listening. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.